Thank you all. It is such a pleasure and a joy to be here with you, and I really appreciate you taking your Friday evening to spend some time here. It is Friday, right? Okay, good. That's what I thought, just I'm never quite sure. Thank you all very much. It is truly an honor to be here, to be at the Detroit Lodge, and to spend this time with you. I am a student of Theosophy, much like many of you. And so what I have to share with you is my own perspective of reincarnation and from a theosophical perspective, primarily. So we'll do the PowerPoint. You guys have heard this, right? YOLO, you only live once. And I think each time, that's it. Of course we live more than once. That's the only thing that makes any sense to us whatsoever. I like to keep people awake in the evening, so a couple of cartoons. Welcome back. Reincarnation has been around for centuries, and we'll talk about that a little bit. I was raised in a theosophical family. As Randy mentioned, I've been a member for over 40 years. I was 2 when I joined. Actually, not really, but I was raised in a theosophical family, and so my belief in reincarnation when I was a little girl is not the same as my belief in reincarnation today. It has changed over the decades, as it should, right? As it should. As we grow, as we learn, as we understand more, things expand. Our understanding expands. When I don't remember a time I didn't believe in reincarnation because it was accepted as a fact in my family, and it made sense. But I lived, every once in a while you'll catch my southern accent. I grew up in a small town in South Louisiana. That's where my home still is, although I'm currently living at our national headquarters outside of Chicago in Wheaton, Illinois. So you'll hear that southern accent come in. Well, when I was a little girl, it was obviously more than a few years ago, reincarnation was not really accepted by very many people. And so I didn't tell anybody that I believed in reincarnation because they would think I was really weird or strange. And they might not even be friends with me, so I didn't talk about it. Things have changed, haven't they? Reincarnation is just part of the way that we talk now. I worked for a while, I'm a counselor by profession. And so I worked with another counselor who she self-identified as a Christian counselor. So when anybody came to our counseling center and they wanted to see a Christian counselor, we made sure they saw her because she would use biblical passages and talk to her clients from that perspective. And yet she would say things like, well, in my next life. I think, really? Do you really? I don't think she believed in reincarnation, but it was just so much a part of the language, so that's where she was coming from. So it has changed over the years. Thank goodness it's gotten to the point where it is a part of our lexicon, it's just a part of our community. Why do you think reincarnation is so fascinating? Because it really is. It really is. So I wondered, and I thought, well, is it because we get a do-over? I didn't do such a great job in this lifetime, so maybe in my next lifetime, I'll do it again and better. Or is it because we feel like we might win the life lottery? In my next lifetime, I'm going to be tall and slender, or maybe I'm going to be born in a wealthy family, or maybe I'll be, whatever. Winning the life lottery, that could be part of it. Or maybe it's really the recognition that there is something to it, that it is a reality. And that's what kind of rings true for us and draws people to want to learn more and study about reincarnation. So it's bigger on this television than I've seen it, but it is not easy to see, so I am going to read it to you. Dr. Jim Tucker took over the work of Ian Stevenson at the University of Virginia, where he was investigating, as most of you know, he investigated stories. I don't like to use the word story. That implies that it's not true. Descriptions of past life experiences of young children. Tucker has a hypothesis on how reincarnation can exist from a scientific perspective, which I thought was interesting because you don't hear that very often. So what he says is that quantum physics shows that at the most basic level of the universe, events involving its smallest particles, such as electrons and protons, only occur once they are observed. This suggests that the material world may be derived from consciousness and not the other way around. Although that idea is debated by many, it's a belief that's been shared by a number of quantum physicists, including Max Planck, the father of quantum mechanics. If consciousness creates the material world, then it may not be dependent upon that world to exist. It would follow that consciousness does not depend on a living brain to exist. If consciousness doesn't require a brain, it may continue after the brain stops working. It could then get attached to a new brain and continue on in another life. We don't often hear reincarnation discussed from a scientific perspective. And you notice it's a hypothesis, and he's saying may. My conjecture is, of course, and the Theosophical teaching is, that consciousness does exist beyond the physical body, and that it does continue when the body dies. What we're talking about here is spiritual evolution. Not physical evolution of Darwinianism, but spiritual evolution. This is the belief that the soul, the thing, whatever it is, it doesn't matter what we call it, the soul, the spirit, whatever is inhabiting this body, whatever is looking out of these eyes, okay, is separate from the body. That consciousness, of course, leaves the physical body when it dies, like taking off an old coat or a heavy coat or the coat at the end of the winter. It's just taking off the coat because I continue after that coat is taken off. We talk about spending, in terms of the process of reincarnation, talk about spending once that coat's removed, once the body is removed. Consciousness goes on to exist in other fields of consciousness, other vibrational areas. It depends. Again, so many words can be used. The previous lifetime is processed, thought about. What did I do well? What do I need to improve on? Where did I kind of not make it this time? And then consciousness continues, is reincarnated into another body, and the process continues. Again, spiritual evolution. The whole idea, let me step back a second. What I didn't say is there is a term called transmigration. Have any of you heard of that? Okay. That's when somebody says, you know, in my next lifetime, I'm going to be a cat because they just lay in the sun all day and sleep and people take care of them and they don't have to do anything they don't want to do. That's transmigration. That's not what we're talking about here. The Theosophical teaching, the esoteric teaching, is that there is a spiritual progression. I'm not saying that cats aren't spiritually progressive, because they probably are in their own way. But things move forward. Once we've moved into human bodies, we continue in that process of human bodies. We don't return to bodies of animals. That's transmigration. So that's not what I'm talking about. We have this spiritual evolution. We continue in these various bodies, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, in order to become fully human. We think we're fully human. We're not. We're in this body. Have you learned everything you need to know to be fully human? No, I haven't, certainly. And I don't think most of us have. So the goal of these lifetimes, one after another, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, I don't have any idea, are so that we can spiritually evolve. We go through the lifetimes, we learn lessons, our consciousness expands, we grow in awareness and understanding until we become fully human, until we're perfect humans. Perfect humans is what it is. John Algeo, former president of the Theosophical Society in America, said that the purpose of our many lives is to further the evolutionary development of our minds and souls. Not our brains, but our minds. That aspect of us that is part of the soul that continues on that evolutionary journey. Through each lifetime, we're expanding our consciousness. Through each lifetime, we are becoming fully human. And at that point, when we become fully human, we truly recognize inherently the unity of all life. We may believe it cognitively at this point, that all life is one, but to experience it consistently and continuously, that's when we are fully human. We may have little inklings of it at times, maybe when we meditate, maybe at other times we kind of feel that being one with all. When we do that consistently, when we stay in that place, when we've learned all there is to know, that's when we are fully human. And that is spiritual evolution. If you can see it, little guy saying to his dad or grandpa probably, yeah, well, I didn't believe in reincarnation when I was your age either. So true. Little ones are more likely to remember than those of us who have a few more years on us. So, historically speaking, we can find references to reincarnation in any number of cultures, traditions around the world. In ancient Egyptian mythology, of course, in the Upanishads of the Hindus, in indigenous cultures around the world, in the writings of Homer, Hesiod, Socrates, and Plato. There are possibly references that were in the Bible that were removed during either the first Council of Nicaea in 325 AD or in the Fifth Council of Constantinople in 553. This has been disputed by many Christians, but there are references that indicate that reincarnation was included in the Bible initially. Lots of history. Lots of history. So some famous people who believed in reincarnation. Benjamin Franklin. Thus, finding myself to exist in the world, I believe I shall, in some shape or other, always exist. And with all the inconveniences human life is liable to, I shall not object to a new edition of mine, hoping, however, that the errata of the last may be corrected. George Patton. He said, so as through a glass and darkly, the age-long strife I see, where I fought in many guises, many names, but always me. He was very outspoken in his belief that he had believed in reincarnation. It had been, I think, an army officer, a leader. Hannibal's brother. Okay. Oh, the doctor, yeah. Your best bet is reincarnation. Yeah. It feels like that sometimes, doesn't it? Tina Turner. I'm very sure that my spirit will live on in a different place as it has lived many times before. Yes, of course I believe in reincarnation. I know that in previous lives I've lived in France, and long before that in Egypt. Henry Ford, you guys have probably heard of him. I adopted the theory of reincarnation when I was 26. Work is futile if we cannot utilize the experience we collect in one life in the next. When I discovered reincarnation, it was as if I had found a universal plan. Time was no longer limited. I was no longer a slave to the hands of the clock. Genius is experience. It is the fruit of long experience in many lives. The discovery of reincarnation put my mind at ease. We used to send the souls of the dead to heaven or hell, but then that whole recycling mania began. Mark Twain. I've been born more times than anybody except Krishna. Rudyard Kipling. They will come back again, as long as the red earth rolls. He never wasted a tree, a leaf, or a tree. Do you think he would squander souls? If you believe in reincarnation, when you die, instead of rest in peace, shouldn't we say BRB, be right back? Halle Berry. I believe in reincarnation. It's something I've thought about for a long, long time. I just cannot accept that this is all that there is to life. I do believe that maybe we are souls, and we travel and we come back here as many times as we need to in different forms to evolve to our highest level. Thomas Edison. The only survival I can conceive is to start a new earth cycle again. You guys familiar with the Highwaymen? Yeah? Let's see. Waylon Jennings, Chris Christopherson, Johnny Cash, and I always forget one. Who have I forgotten? Thank you. How could I forget? Willie is always the same one I forget. How in the world I could forget Willie Nelson is beyond me. Okay. Gives me chills to hear that and to read the words. There's Walt Whitman. Let's see. I know I am deathless. No doubt I've died myself 10,000 times before. I laugh at what you call dissolution, and I know the amplitude of time. Gandhi. I cannot think of permanent enmity between man and man, believing as I do in the theory of rebirth. I shall live in the hope that if not in this birth, in some other birth, I shall be able to hug all humanity in friendly embrace. So let me tell you a little bit about Kevin. My former life, before I was working full-time for the Theosophical Society, I was a counselor. And I primarily worked with children, loved to work with children, happy to sit on the floor and play games. I am a play therapist. And so one of the things about play therapy is that you let the child guide the session. It's wonderful. And they choose to do what they're going to do. It's absolutely amazing in that they can work out whatever they're struggling with through their play. They actually play it out. Their play is their words. Or the toys are their words and their play is their language. Anyway, so I had this little guy. Kevin is not his name. Probably couldn't even come up with his name right now if I needed to. He was about 4 or 5. And his mom, I saw her first. She said, I need you to see him. He's really angry. They've told me that at school he's acting out, he's throwing temper tantrums, and that he can't come back to school until he sees a counselor. That's kind of tough when you're 4 or 5. And at home, just having trouble throwing temper tantrums again, not listening, not cooperating. And so we talked about it, and this little guy, when he was born, he had a hole in his heart. And so he was in intensive care and could not be touched for a good period of time, maybe 6 weeks, 2 months, because any physical stimulation would start his heart pounding, which was problematic with the hole in his heart. And then again, when he was a little bit older, he had another physical trauma. I don't remember what it was. But so she was afraid that it could have been those things. He also had a brand new baby brother, which also can cause an issue, of course, a little sibling rivalry. So I said, sure, I'll see him. Cute little guy, came in, and as a 4 or 5-year-old, his real interest was Batman. He wanted to be Batman. So my office was set up to see both adults and children. I had lots of toys, but I also had a love seat, a chair, and a coffee table. And so Kevin gets up on this coffee table, and he says, I'm Batman. I can fly. And of course, I'm thinking, oh, please don't hurt yourself in my office. He goes to the end of the coffee table, and he jumps off. He wasn't very high, so off he jumps. And he rolls on the floor. And he looks at me, and he says, help me. And I said, you need help? And he said, yes. I said, what do you want me to do? He said, the oil is leaking out of my wings. Help me. And I said, okay, what should I do? And he said, take me to the hospital. I said, okay. So I picked him up, carried him over to the sofa, pretended like it was the hospital, laid him down. And I said, now what do I do? He said, bandage my wings. They're leaking oil. I said, okay. So I bandaged his wings. He was fine. Batman again, off the coffee table again, leaking wings, and on we go. He played this pretty consistently in session for maybe 3 or 4 weeks. Okay. And then the Batman story continued, and we sat on this love seat together, and this was all his stuff. So he said, let's sit here. He said, I'm going to drive the Batmobile, and we have to go get the hydraulics. I'm thinking, hydraulics? How does this kid know about hydraulics? But, who knows what kids watch on television. So he's speeding in the boat. We're in a boat, in the water, going to get the hydraulics. Of course, the love seat's not moving. He says, we're there, but I have to jump out and get it. So he jumps off the sofa, swims, grabs something, and comes back to the love seat. Got the hydraulics. Okay. Again, he does this for a period of time. So then he tells me that, and this has probably gone on maybe for a couple of months. I really don't have a clue what's happening with him, but whatever it is, it's important to him because he keeps playing it over and over, which tells me that this is important to him. So he gets up on the coffee table, jumps off, rolls around on the floor, says he needs to be rescued. I pick him up, put him on the sofa, bandage the oil leaking out of his wings, and he said, it's not any good. It's not any good. I don't have my hydraulics. And I said, but I thought we found him. He said, they fell off. It's not going to help. And he said, I'm stuck. I'm stuck, and I'm going underwater. And I said, tell me about it. And he said, I'm scared. I'm going to die. And I said, you're okay. You're okay. It's okay to be scared. Kind of lay there, and I said, did your hydraulics fall off and you landed in the water? Yeah. And I was trapped, and I died. And I said, that must have been really scary for you. He said, I was really scared. And I said, you're Kevin now, and you're safe. And he's kind of agreed, but not really. And I said, "Are you scared a lot?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Would it help if I told your mom that you were scared?" "Yeah." I said, "What would you like from your mom?" He said, "I just want her to tell me I'm okay." I said, "Okay, I can do that. I can do that." So, talked to his mom. I mean, you all know what I'm thinking, right? Here's this kid who in a previous life crashed, his airplane crashed, hydraulics were shut off, whatever. Airplane crashed, he was trapped and drowned. And came back pretty quickly into this new little guy, Kevin. That's what I'm thinking. I have no clue, okay? I don't know. I'm going to tell you that right now. I don't know. But that's what I believe. But I don't know that his mama's going to take this in too well. So I thought about it for a while, and I thought, should I tell her what I think? Should I let it go? Again, small southern rural community. Better let this one go. Because it really doesn't matter. All that matters is that she needs to know that Kevin is scared, and he needs to be reassured that he's safe now. So I talked to Mom, told her that. She said, "Okay, I can do that." Within a month, he quit coming to see me. That was it. It's what he needed. He needed to know that he was safe. Now again, I can't tell you that I know that's what happened to Kevin. I don't see past lives, okay, mine or anybody else's. But I can tell you that's the way it felt in my heart and in my gut. Okay. Wake up. You're not supposed to go to sleep on me. Come on. There. All right. It's not fair. Calvin and Hobbes. Love Calvin and Hobbes. Why can't I stay up late? You guys can. It's not fair. You guys heard that before? The world isn't fair, Calvin. I know, but why isn't it ever fair, unfair in my favor? Right? Why isn't it ever unfair in my favor? It's not. So, another story. Actually, before I go to the next story, I'm going to let you sit with Kevin for a little bit. You know, we've talked a little bit about reincarnation. We've talked about it historically. We've talked about why, or, you know, how it happens. Okay, the consciousness exists beyond the death of the physical body. And that's all great. I'm not probably telling you anything that you don't know. Okay? That's why you're here tonight. But what difference does it make to us today? Why is it pertinent for us today? Because life's not fair. Life is not fair, and reincarnation helps us to understand that. It helps us to live with that. Children living in war zones, and there are a lot of those right now, aren't there? It's not fair. How can one child live in a war zone and another child live in a beautiful, fancy house with everything they need and all the love that they want and the safety? And that's not fair. What about somebody who loses the love of their life at a young age, and yet another person lives with the love of their life into their 90s and even hundreds? It's not fair. Makes me want to stomp my foot sometimes. Does it ever make you feel that way? Just stomp your foot and say, this is not fair. Why does this happen? Those children who were shot at that school in California yesterday. Why was this child shot and this child not? Why did this family lose their teenager and this family didn't? It's all around us. And it's especially not fair if we believe we only have one life to live. I don't know how people make sense of the world if they don't believe in reincarnation. Belief in reincarnation doesn't change the tragedy. Okay? It doesn't change the tragedy. That child was still killed yesterday. There's tragedy there for that child, but most especially for that child's family. So it doesn't change the tragedy. But what it does do is to help us understand and possibly to look at it a little bit differently. That, I think, is the value. As we think about reincarnation, as we think about a child who died, a child who's living in a war zone, somebody who loses the love of their life. When we look at our lifetime, and I see there are a group of people here of various ages, right? And as we get older, we have a tendency to look back at our life, don't we? Sure doesn't seem that long, does it? Just yesterday I was 20. I don't know about y'all. Some of you might have been 20 yesterday. I don't know. But we get this idea, or we understand from this idea of reincarnation and this whole cyclicity, okay, that these lifetimes are very short. This 70, 80, 90 years, whatever it is for people, it's very short. But they are full of experiences, aren't they? They are full of things that we learn. When you look back on your life, regardless of your age, when have you learned the most? Probably when things were really difficult. Probably when you could have said, this isn't fair. This shouldn't have happened to me, or this shouldn't have happened to that person. That's when we learn the most. And that's what this is all about. About experiences and growth and understanding. Now, that sounds sort of fatalistic, doesn't it? And I don't mean for it to sound fatalistic, because I don't think we should ever stop working for social justice. I don't think we should ever stop being compassionate and having empathy for others who are struggling. That is very much a part of this expansion of consciousness, an important part of this expansion of consciousness, okay, that we are experiencing as we go through these lifetimes. So let me tell you about this family. And it's obviously not this family. So I did not work with this family. I just happened to be working in the vicinity when this family came through our facility. Family had a history of domestic violence. There were probably 4 or 5 kids in the family. One night, one of the little kids was awake, as happens, came down the stairs. Parents were fighting, so didn't come all the way down the stairs, just sat part of the way down on the stairs. Dad kills the mom. And then he dismembers her and puts her body parts in garbage bags. This little kid's sitting there the whole time. The other kids are upstairs asleep. I know, I'm probably traumatizing y'all, I'm sorry. But there's a reason and a purpose, and I think it's worth traumatizing you to some degree. Anyway, so Dad gets the garbage bags, he takes them, puts them in the back of their van, and then he goes and gets all the kids and says, come on, we gotta go. Puts them all in the van. Okay, now remember, this one kid knows that Mom's body parts are in the garbage bags in the back of the van. Dad drives down the highway, stops on the side of the road, dumps the garbage bags, and then goes on home. The reason I know about this is because the child who saw what happened came to our facility with the police to talk with a forensic interviewer to talk about what happened as part of the evidence against the dad, actually. Anyway, why am I telling you this? Because it's not fair, for one thing. I don't know why this happened to anybody in that family. I don't know why the dad did what he did, why it happened to the mom, why the child saw it, why the other children experienced it vicariously. and ultimately experienced the loss of their mother and their father because he was convicted and did go to jail. But I'm guessing that there was something for all of them to learn. And the reason I'm sharing it with you is because I think there is something for us to learn as well from this story. And it's not a story. From what happened. What can we learn? Compassion, empathy, understanding, love. Pretty easy to feel compassion for the children, empathy for the children, compassion for the mother. What about compassion for the father who did this? Doesn't absolve him of his responsibility for his behaviors, ever. We're never absolved of our responsibility for our behaviors. But why did he do this? I don't know. But can I learn to feel compassion for this person? Maybe that's my job. Maybe that's part of what I'm supposed to learn at this point. Because for some reason it came into my world, and now I've brought it into yours. So there is something to be learned from this that will expand our awareness, our consciousness. What I've told you is probably no worse than what we hear on the news. Whether we watch it in the morning or the evening, or we read it on the internet, or we read it in the newspaper, if those still exist and you actually get one. Okay. We know what's going on out there, don't we? We don't want to. Okay. And in our world today, we are encouraged to hate, to be divisive, to dislike other people for the way they look or what they believe or what they've done. Aren't we? And we can fall into that trap. I'm thinking none of you here do that. But we have to be aware, again, and feel that compassion because, according to the esoteric philosophy, all of us are part of the one. Whatever you call it, whether you call it God or Brahm, okay, or the universe or the one. Like the sun shining through a prism into all of these beautiful rays of color. That's us. But we're all still part of that one. So what happens to one of us happens to all of us. What happened to that mom, to all of those kids, what happened to the dad, that happened to all of us because we are all one. You know, when we think about reincarnation, we often think about karma. Okay? So I don't always try and stay away from anything political, but I think this is a social justice issue, so I'm going to bring it up and hope that if you find it political, you'll forgive me and give me an ounce here of space. The children whose parents brought them across the border from Mexico and now are being deported, and the children are being separated at the border from their parents. Again, I'm not going toward the political component of that. But we can say on an esoteric level, well, when those children were born, when those parents were born, they knew what was going to happen when ultimately in that lifetime. We can even say from a physical point of view, well, those parents brought them across the border. They should have known something was going to happen. Okay? No. That's not what karma is all about. Okay. If we say, well, let me rephrase that. that not what karma's all about. It's not our place to say, this is a better way of saying it, they knew. So I wonder what we're going to have for dinner. And just kind of blow it off. We do that, don't we? Sometimes. We do when we watch the news. Well, you know, those people put themselves in that situation. They shouldn't have driven down that street. They shouldn't have gone there. So what are we going to have for dinner? I wonder what I'll get at the grocery store. We just kind of push it away. We can't do that. We can't do that, in my opinion, either from an ethical or a moral perspective, from a karmic perspective. So yes, working for social justice. Yes, working for equality for all people, but also from an internal perspective of recognizing that unity and recognizing the importance of having empathy, compassion, and love no matter what. So I'm going to finish up. I'm not going to finish up with that. I'm going to finish up with this. So you guys may have heard this before, and if you have, I apologize for repeating it, but I think I personally can hear it frequently. Because each time I hear it, it makes me think of something else, hear it on another level. It's called The Egg by Andy Weir. You were on your way home when you died. It was a car accident, nothing particularly remarkable, but fatal nonetheless. You left behind a wife and 2 children. It was a painless death. The EMTs tried their best to save you, but to no avail. Your body was so utterly shattered, you were better off. Trust me. And that's when you met me. What happened? You asked. Where am I? You died, I said matter-of-factly. But don't feel bad about it. Everybody dies. There was a truck, and it was skidding. Yep. I died? Yeah, no point mincing words. You looked around. There was nothingness. Just you and me. What is this place? You asked. Is this the afterlife? More or less, I said. Are you God? You asked. Yep, I'm God. My kids, my wife, you asked. What about them? Will they be all right? Now that's what I like to see right there. You just died and your main concern is for your family. That's good stuff right there. You looked at me with some fascination. To you, I didn't look like God. I just looked like some man or possibly a woman, some vague authority figure maybe, more of a grammar school teacher than the Almighty. Don't worry, I said, they'll be fine. Your kids will remember you as perfect in every way. They didn't have time to grow contempt for you. Your wife will cry on the outside, but will be secretly relieved. To be fair, your marriage was falling apart. If it's any consolation, she'll feel very guilty for feeling relieved. Oh, so what happens now? Do I go to heaven or hell or something? Neither. You'll be reincarnated. Oh, you said. So the Hindus were right. All religions are right in their own way, I said. Walk with me. You followed along as we strode through the void. Where are we going? Nowhere in particular, I said. It's just nice to walk while we talk. So, what's the point then? You asked. When I get reborn, I'll just be a blank slate, right? A baby. So all my experiences and everything I did in this life won't matter? Not so, I said. You have within you all the knowledge and experiences of all your past lives. You just don't remember them right now. I stopped walking and took you by the shoulders. Your soul is more magnificent, beautiful, and gigantic than you can possibly imagine. A human mind can only contain a tiny fraction of what you are. It's like sticking your finger in a glass of water to see if it's hot or cold. You put a tiny part of yourself in the vessel, and when you bring it back out, you've gained all the experiences it had. You've been in a human for the last 48 years, so you haven't stretched out yet and felt the rest of your immense consciousness. If we hung out here for long enough, you'd start remembering everything. But there's no point to doing that between each life. How many times have I been reincarnated then? Oh, lots. Lots and lots. And in lots of different lives. This time around, you'll be a Chinese peasant girl in 540 AD. Wait, what? You stammered. You're sending me back in time? Well, I guess, technically, time as you know it only exists in your universe. Things are different where I come from. Where you come from, you said? Oh, sure, I explained. I come from somewhere else. And there are others like me. I know you'll want to know what it's like there, but honestly, you wouldn't understand. Oh, you said, a little let down. But wait, if I get reincarnated to other places in time, I could have interacted with myself at some point. Sure, happens all the time. And with both lives only aware of their own lifespan, you don't even know it's happening. So, what's the point of it all? Seriously, I asked? Seriously? You're asking me for the meaning of life? Don't you think that's a little stereotypical? Well, it's a reasonable question, you persisted. I looked you in the eye. The meaning of life, the reason I made this whole universe, is for you to mature. You mean mankind. You want us to mature. No, just you. I made this whole universe for you. With each new life, you grow and mature and become a larger and greater intellect. Just me? What about everybody else? There is no one else. In this universe, there's just you and me. You stared blankly at me. But all the people on earth? All you. Different incarnations of you. Wait, I'm everyone? Now you're getting it, I said, with a congratulatory slap on the back. I'm every human being who ever lived? Or who will ever live? Yes, I said. I'm Abraham Lincoln? And you're John Wilkes Booth, too, I said. I'm Hitler? You said, appalled. And you're the millions he killed. I'm Jesus? And you're everyone who followed him. You fell silent. Every time you victimized someone, I said, you are victimizing yourself. Every act of kindness you've done to yourself. Every happy and sad moment ever experienced by any human was or will be experienced by you. You thought for a long time, why? Why do all this? Because someday you will become like me. Because that's what you are. You are one of my kind. You're my child. Whoa, you said incredulous. You mean I'm a god? No, not yet. You're a fetus. You're still growing. Once you've lived every human life throughout all time, you will have grown enough to be born. So the whole universe, it's just an egg, I answered. Now it's time for you to move on to your next life. And I sent you on your way. Thank you so much for spending your time here with me tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you. So,
any questions before I make a bunch of announcements?
so let me tell you this. I don't have any answers. You're welcome to ask questions. I have lots of opinions, but I don't have any real answers. But I'm certainly, if you've got thoughts, comments. Yes, ma'am.
What are your personal experiences with reincarnation for yourself?
For myself, I have no memory of any past incarnation. I have very, very close ties with some of my family members. We've been told by a clairvoyant that we have incarnated together as a group many times. And I believe that's probably accurate because we finish each other's sentences. We know what the other's going to say before they say it. We talk in half language. I believe it with all of my heart because it feels right to me. It feels right. I don't believe just because I was raised with it or because my grandmother said it. I believe it because it's here. I'm not sure if that's what you're... Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Have you been involved at all in regression and hypnosis?
I have not. And I haven't for... I'm really curious about what I've been in my past life, and I make jokes about it, like I probably lived during, whatever, Cleopatra's time, but I was probably one of those slaves that spent their time fanning her, or cleaning the bathrooms if they had such a thing. You don't think they had bathrooms? Oh, or that I wasn't clean? I was probably cleaning. Trust me, I was probably sweeping those streets or whatever. My answer to you about regression is that I just haven't for a couple of reasons. One is that I've not met anybody I really trusted well enough to be willing to do that with. And the other reason is I think I need to keep, personally, this is just my personal perspective, I need to keep my focus on this lifetime right now. I could get so caught up in what I was before that I think it could distract me from what my path and my goal is now. But again, that's just my perspective. Yes, ma'am.
So, if the divine dichotomy is that God is everything that is and everything that isn't, right? So, in order to understand love, we need to understand hate. In order to understand good, we have to know evil. So, as part of our whole karmic experience, the evolution to one side or the other, you need both, right? So, where's the kind of demarcation between where that path takes you and what necessarily discerns something better than the worse? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And did you want to respond?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to
Yeah.
mention that you didn't bring up the word karma.
No.
And from a West Eastern point of view, you only reincarnate if you have karma or if you have reached enlightenment so that you can help other people. But people in the West tend to have this idea that it's a reward, and it's really considered a punishment because you haven't reached enlightenment if you reincarnate. So you have to go through the whole thing again, and then again.
Yeah. I purposely didn't bring up karma because that's actually a whole nother lecture, and we would have been here half the night, and it is Friday, and you might have things you want to do, or like go to bed after a long week of work.
I thought it was interesting that we in the West were so attached to this life or whatever, whereas Easterners think of it as kind of a punishment, suffering,
Yeah. And the Buddha said life is suffering. Right. To answer your question, I don't know the answer to that, okay? But I have to assume that if I've lived many lifetimes, okay, and have many more to go, that in each one I will experience both light and dark, okay, whether we call it love and not love, whatever. One of the, and I think it's in that book that I recommended to you, Joy Mills, who was a lecturer for the Theosophical Society for many years, and many of you may have known her, she talked about another lady named Marie Poots. And Miss Poots who died before I was born, which y'all didn't need to know probably. But Ms. Poots talked about, right and wrong and good and bad and that sort of thing. And she said from her perspective, and this really rings true for me, is that there is love and not love. And love is anything that helps a person on their spiritual path. And not love is anything that obstructs someone on their spiritual path. So it's not, I wouldn't, make it as evil as such is so laden with so many different meanings. So love and not love feels more comfortable to me personally. But I suspect, well, I can tell you that in my own lifetime, and I'm sure for all of you, I've experienced both love and not love. And so I think that's just part of, and how do we know? I think that's part of that experience, because I think we have to experience both. And I think we have before, and I think we probably will again. I don't know if that's any value to you or not.
Well, it just seems to me that one can't exist without the other.
I agree with you. There's a balance, right? Because when you have light, there's going to be shadow. Okay. And if we only have light without any shadow, then how do we know it's light? And I agree with you. Okay. But I do think that this whole thing is an evolutionary process, and I think we're a far way from being a place where there's only light and not shadow as well. Hello. Yes, sir.
Hi, thank you. So I'm curious about this idea. So let's say people are having experience with ancestors, or you're part of tradition at certain times of the year, like you just passed.
Yeah.
In the Samhain season, you would call upon departed spirits that you've had relationships with your family. And let's say you felt you had an interaction maybe with what you would think of as a spirit of a departed person you knew, but yet in this theory, there'd be this soul or spirit that was once that person and is now reincarnated into another person. So is there a realm where spirit exists, these consciousness entities that we associate with a person? Can they exist in both places? So they're reincarnated, but yet also available to us as the person we knew.
Yeah.
And how might that work out? When people have very, like you have a palpable experience
Yeah.
of reincarnation.
Yeah.
So other people have this palpable feeling, that was my mom, that was grandma's.
So again, I'm going to tell you that I don't have the answer. Okay. I will tell you that what we've talked about tonight is a very surface perspective of reincarnation. This is a public lecture. It's a very surface perspective on reincarnation. And there's so much there's so much material that can be studied, and tremendous depths for reincarnation. I'm actually working for the Theosophical online school. They asked me to do an online course as an intermediate component of reincarnation. And it's again, and there's so much more beyond that. So my answer to you is, my own personal perspective is that we don't really have an understanding of what those other fields of consciousness are like. Okay? So when we talk about the composition of a human being, okay, we have the physical component, we have an emotional component, we have a mental component, sort of what's called the lower mind, which is the concrete, the higher mind, which is more abstract and is more along the spiritual component. We also have higher elements that make up that sort of, and I'm doing this, I don't know that there's an up and a down, okay? It's an in and an out, whatever, because that's why fields of consciousness works better than planes of existence. Anyway, I think there's always that highest aspect of ourselves that, while it sends a ray down into the physical incarnation, it's always still there, okay, in and of itself. So yes, we always have access to that, but it may not of someone else. I mean, it's always there. It doesn't go away, but it doesn't fully incarnate. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good, because that's kind of I don't know that I made much sense. I didn't expect to answer that kind of question. You're making me work hard. That's good. Yes, sir.
You ever encountered the book or the movie Soul Survivor?
No.
It's kind of like the Kevin story, but more embellishments, where the child was actually diagramming the inside of the cockpit of the
Wow.
crash.
Yeah.
And his parents took him to meet a wartime chum.
Yeah.
And the guy was obviously much older. They were talking like they did.
When they were
Right.
alive together. Yeah, I personally have no doubt that reincarnation, I just have no doubt. And I do think that people who are killed traumatically have a tendency to come back much more rapidly so that there's more of a memory to be brought over. I don't think that happens with everybody, but I do think that it's more likely when there's traumatic or sudden death like that. So, yes, ma'am.
I asked the gentleman who just shared that story. I didn't catch it. Is this a movie or a book? And if so, what's the title?
It's called Soul Survivor. It started as a book. I think it's better than a movie.
Sounds
It's a little
good.
bit of Hollywood.
Yeah.
Soul Survivor.
Always Hollywood, right? Always. Yes, sir.
When you were relating to us about being in the egg,
Mm-hmm.
that last
Mm-hmm.
little rendition, how is it that you sent somebody back into the past?
Well-
Is that, I'm sure,
So again, that was written by Andy Weir, and that is his story. And personally, his stuff and my stuff, I'm not 100% in agreement with what he said, but I love the idea that it just so clearly tells us that we are all one, and that what happens to one of us happens to all of us. I do wonder about time, and I'm not a scientist. I'm a counselor. I'm much better with feelings than I am with quantum physics or Einstein's, all that wave and particle stuff that I don't get. But who knows?
yeah.
Who really
Earlier you got
knows?
the picture of a bud and then
Oh, yeah, going,
blossomed
yes.
into a flower,
Yeah.
and you said, well, this is what we're doing.
Spiritual evolution, yeah. But we don't know if it's spiritual evolution in linear time.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, a dandelion goes back into a bud and then
See?
becomes you blow on it and it
That's it.
repopulates.
Yeah. And makes you sneeze. Yes, sir.
Lot to think about.
I can't give you the source, but some say time is only relevant to this physical plane that we're encompassing right now.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me one bit. And again, about your comment, and then I'll stop because I want you guys to have time to have some tea and to visit and talk and whatever you need to do. But there is a Michael Newton is the author of a couple of books, and he has some people. He's passed away now, I think, but there are other people who've carried on his work. But he, psychologist, did hypnotherapy, and he started investigating or talking to people about their life between lives. And so I found it fascinating. It didn't all ring true for me personally, but some of it rang so true, and I thought, this makes so much sense. So I just share that with you if it's useful. Again, if it doesn't ring true to me, I'm fine with it and happy with it, and I just let it go, and who knows, another 20 or 30 years it might. So